A few weeks ago, Elon Musk sues OpenAI. Now, this isn't news, this was a few weeks ago, but I wanted to make a detailed video that shows the full story. This is going to be a very detailed video which talks about everything that happened, why it happened, all the people involved, so that you get a complete understanding of what's going on in this lawsuit and what to expect in the future. So with that, let's jump right in. Before we dive into the lawsuit, let's rewind a few years back and look at why OpenAI was even created. So in 2010, a startup called DeepMind was founded by Demis Hassabis and a few other co-founders. During that time, they were training an AI on how to play really basic games like Breakout, Pong, and Space Invaders. And eventually, that AI became a complete expert at these games. It was able to basically master all of these games that it was trained on. And this caught the attention of early investors such as Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, who's a co-founder of PayPal, and Peter's Founders Fund. They recognized that this technology was more than just being good at simple video games. If they can train AI to be an expert in these virtual environments, then we can also extrapolate this into the real world. AI can be good at real life as well. So this could be a potentially revolutionary technology. And there's a funny story behind why Elon invested in DeepMind in the early days. So Elon met with DeepMind's co-founder and CEO, Demis, which is this guy here, and he told Demis about his plans to colonize Mars. We all know that that's what he's trying to do with SpaceX. That's the mission of SpaceX. But Musk was left dumbfounded after Hassabis or Demis said that AI might destroy his colonies on Mars. Additionally, AI being in the mix could lead to the human colony's destruction too. So upon hearing this, Elon freaks out and he understands the dangers of AI. It could potentially wipe out not only his plan to colonize Mars, but also wipe out humans. And so after that shocking discussion with the DeepMind co-founder, Musk invested in DeepMind. The original source of this story was this New York Times article, but if you've been following my channel, we've seen that the New York Times, they have been wrong on some things, so take this with a grain of salt. Also, Elon is great at marketing and PR and telling stories, right? He's done this with his Twitter acquisition. He's done this with all his SpaceX launches and right now the new Cybertruck launch. He's really good at crafting stories. So take this into consideration as well. All right, so that was the story as we know on how and why Elon invested in DeepMind earlier on. Now, later, Elon finds out that Google was trying to buy DeepMind. Now, Google, even at that time, had pretty much all the data in the world, right? They have Google Search, they have Gmail, they have YouTube, they have the best talent, they have the best hardware and data centers. So if this deal goes through, it could turn into a monopoly for AI. Google would be the most dominant and the biggest AI company out there, which is fine. I mean, Google seems nice, right? And at that time, Elon and Google CEO Larry Page were good friends. So Elon would often sleep over at Larry's apartment if he didn't want to commute home after work for whatever reason. They were often seen hanging out with each other, so Elon and Larry one day had a discussion about the dangers of AI, because again, Elon heard that Google was aiming to acquire DeepMind. So Elon was bringing up the topic of AI safety and how it could wipe out humanity, but at least according to Elon, Larry kind of plays it off. He's like, we'll let AI do its own thing. AI safety isn't really a top concern. It's not a priority at this stage. And as the discussion kind of heated up, Larry accused Musk of being a speciesist, which is someone who prefers humans over other life forms, basically. And that really pissed Elon off. I guess for these big tech nerds and tech CEOs, they don't just insult each other by saying, you mother. Instead, an insult to them would be like, you filthy little speciesist. That would really piss them off. But anyways, all jokes aside, a speciesist is basically someone who is biased towards humans, towards humanity, versus other life forms. So Elon's like, well, yeah, I do like humans. I am pro-human. Are you not? This was the story that kind of ended their friendship and triggered Elon to build and invest in OpenAI, as we see later. Now, again, keep in mind, Elon is not just great at building tech, but he's really good at crafting a narrative. as we've seen with his Twitter acquisition, for example. So I believe this story of Larry calling him a speciesist, this was according to Elon. We don't really know what exactly happened on that day, but take this into consideration. This is, I believe, according to Elon, what happened on that day. Is this the truth? Nobody knows except these two. All right, so they ended their friendship, and Google was about to acquire DeepMind. So actually, Elon tried to approach DeepMind CEO and co-founder Demis again to try to convince him not to take Google's deal. Musk said that the future of AI should not be controlled by Larry. Musk even tried to outbid Google's offer by teaming up with PayPal co-founder Luke Nosek to try to get enough funding to acquire DeepMind himself. However, that ended up failing, and Google acquired DeepMind in 2014 for $500 million. So at that time, Sam Altman reached out to Elon. Sam Altman at the time was the president of Y Combinator, arguably the best startup accelerator in the world. Many top tech companies have come out of Y Combinator, including Airbnb, Stripe, Twitch, Instacart, etc. So Sam was the president of Y Combinator, but he also understood the dangers of AI. This was written 9 years ago in February 25th, 2015. This was written by Sam Altman himself on his blog. So he says development of superhuman machine intelligence, or SMI, is probably the greatest threat to the continued existence of humanity. There are other threats that I think are more certain to happen. For example, an engineered virus with a long incubation period and a high mortality rate, but are unlikely to destroy every human in the universe in the way that SMI could. So this was 9 years ago. Sam Altman also understood the dangers of AI if it was controlled by the wrong hands. So Sam reaches out to Elon and proposed to start their own AI company to catch up to Google, to compete with Google. They wanted to make sure Google doesn't monopolize this AI technology. And their new organization, it would be nonprofit and open source. And I believe it was Elon who came up with the name OpenAI. We'll jump into the actual lawsuit document next for more specific details on how and why they formed the company. But this was basically, the story before OpenAI. It was to basically catch up to Google or make sure Google was not a monopoly in the AI space. All right, so moving on to the lawsuit, we're going to go through this line by line and clarify any details along the way so you get a complete understanding of this. So this was filed on February 29th of this year. These are just addressing all the parties involved. And then, all right, this is the intro paragraph on line 26. I'll link to this document in the description below as well if you're interested in reading this further. But this first section basically just introduces how AI has gotten better over time. So over the course of the 20th century, the US gradually shifted from a primarily human labor-based economy to a human knowledge-based economy. So we're moving away from factories, from labor, and more towards knowledge and data and information. As the century progressed, another paradigm shift was underway. Value creation through artificial intelligence. Early AI programs were capable of outperforming humans in certain discrete tasks. For example, AI could show superhuman performance on a highly formalized problem like finding the best path through a network of roads. In 1996, IBM's Deep Blue AI program beat Garry Kasparov, the then world champion in chess. These programs, while useful, were essentially one-trick ponies. Their intelligence was not general. And this is a key topic, as we'll see throughout this lawsuit. So what he's saying is that, all right, there's an AI that can find the best path through a network of roads. There's an AI that can beat the world's best chess player, but these AIs can only do specific tasks. This is known as narrow AI, so they can only do certain tasks like image generation or essay writing or playing StarCraft, but they can't do any other task well. You can see that for AI, there's a spectrum from narrow AI to artificial general intelligence, which is AGI, which we'll definitely talk about in a second, and then finally to artificial superintelligence. So during that time, algorithms for pathfinding could solve a maze or route a car, but they could not paint a painting. So then starting in the late 2000s, early 2010s, an older algorithm called deep learning became practical to implement on low-cost hardware. New top-of-class algorithms were developed for turning speech into text, translating between different languages, recognizing what kind of food is shown in a photo, which is basically object recognition. One of the hallmarks of deep learning is that it doesn't need to be designed with specific knowledge of the task at hand. They learn from training examples, essentially programming themselves. They are far more general purpose. This is key here, and this paragraph is also very important. So he's arguing that as these algorithms become more sophisticated, researchers set their sights on what has come to be called artificial general intelligence, or AGI. This is a general purpose AI system for a variety of tasks like a human. So it's not limited to just one task that it does very well. It can generalize across different tasks. Mr. Musk has long recognized that AGI poses a grave threat to humanity, perhaps the greatest existential threat we face today. In other words, it does have the potential to wipe out humanity. So this goes on and talks about why it's such a big threat. But where some like Mr. Musk see an existential threat in AGI, others see AGI as a source of profit and power. All right, so he's kind of implying that there are bad actors here, potentially. And then he mentions Google DeepMind. So in 2014, Google acquired DeepMind, and one of DeepMind's initial developments was AlphaZero, a chess-playing algorithm. Unlike previous algorithms, AlphaZero used reinforcement learning, where the program learns to play chess by itself by playing itself with different versions of the software. At a very high level, reinforcement learning is just playing a game and you set it the rules, right? The environment, for example, a pawn can only move one step forward, a queen can move wherever she wants. So you set the rules in the game and you set it rewards. So for example, eating the king would be the highest reward, eating a pawn would be a lower reward, etc. And then you have the AI play chess for like millions of times, and each time it learns to get better and better, right? So that's why it's called reinforcement learning. So it says here, when one version of the software wins a game against another, the winning program's internal pathways are reinforced and the process repeats. So this is saying the AI kind of learns to get better and better. AlphaZero became the strongest chess playing system in the world. Shockingly, it was also announced that the same program was also the strongest in the world for playing two other extremely difficult games. AlphaZero achieved within 24 hours a superhuman level of play in the games of chess, shogi, which is Japanese chess, as well as Go, and convincingly defeated a world champion in each case. So again, this is key here because we're going to start seeing this theme more and more in this lawsuit where Elon points to evidence of artificial general intelligence. These are AIs that can perform different tasks. It's not just limited to one specific task. So here he's saying this AlphaZero is not only great at chess, it can also beat the world's best shogi player and the world's best Go player. So with DeepMind, Google immediately catapulted to the front of the race for AGI. Mr. Musk was deeply troubled by this development. He believed that in the hands of a closed for-profit company like Google, AGI poses a particularly acute and noxious danger to humanity. In 2014, it was difficult enough to compete with Google in its core businesses. Google had collected a uniquely large set of data from our searches, our emails, nearly every book in our libraries. So it was like near impossible to compete with Google even at that time. And now they had acquired DeepMind in 2014. So there's a potential that Google would just monopolize this AGI technology. All right, so we move into how and why OpenAI was formed. So Mr. Sam Altman purported to share Elon's concerns over the threat posed by AGI. In 2015, Mr. Altman wrote this quote, which we already brought up in his blog. So development of superhuman machine intelligence is probably the greatest threat to the continued existence of humanity. It could destroy every human in the universe. So it's the same quote here. That was from Sam Altman's blog. Later that same year, Sam approached Elon with a proposal that they join forces to form a non-profit AI lab that would try to catch up to Google in the race for AGI. Together with Greg Brockman, who was at that time CTO of Stripe, the three agreed that this new lab would be a non-profit developing AGI for the benefit of humanity. So that's number one. It's going to be for profit. It would also be open source. It would not keep its technology closed and secret for proprietary commercial reasons. This was the founding agreement. And then Elon named this OpenAI, and it would serve as a vital counterbalance to Google DeepMind in the race for AGI, but would do so to benefit humanity, not the shareholders of a private for-profit company. Again, this line is important because he outlines later how OpenAI has turned into, you can say, a for-profit company, and it's benefiting the shareholders of Microsoft. This founding agreement was memorialized in their certificate of incorporation, which affirmed that its resulting technology will benefit the public and the corporation will seek to open source technology for the public benefit where applicable. The corporation is not organized for the private gain of any person. So this is the exact quote in the certificate of incorporation. I would say this is very vague. So open source technology for public benefit where applicable. So it's kind of a gray area here. The corporation is not organized for the private gain of any person. All right, that makes sense. And then he argues that Mr. Musk was a moving force behind the creation of OpenAI, contributing a majority of its funding in its first several years. And most importantly, recruiting one of the world's leading scientists to work at OpenAI, including chief scientist Ilya Sutskever. So at that time they started OpenAI, it was a nonprofit, so they couldn't really get a decent amount of investments, because if you're investing in a nonprofit, you're not expecting to get a return from your investment. You're kind of just donating the money. While at that time, Google had all the money in the world, they were paying their AI engineers an absurd amount of money to stay at Google and build AI. So it was extremely hard to compete with Google at that time. If you're just a nobody, you're just a startup with no funding. So as we'll see later, Elon contributed millions of dollars to OpenAI to, pay for the hardware, pay for the engineers. Plus, Elon was the one who recruited, or you can say poached, Ilya Sutskever from Google. This was a key moment for OpenAI, because if Ilya came over to work at OpenAI, and Ilya is like a superstar in AI research, then other AI researchers would follow. So he says here, recruiting for OpenAI was a Herculean task in the face of relentless recruiting offers by Google DeepMind. There were claims that even at that time, Google was offering over $1 million in annual salary to AI scientists. There would have been no OpenAI without Mr. Musk's founding contributions and early leadership. He continued to make contributions to OpenAI from its founding through September 14th, 2020. Next, it goes into more details on what happened after they formed the company. So OpenAI's initial research was performed in the open, providing free and public access to designs, models, and code. And then later, Google released this revolutionary paper called Transformers, which really supercharged the development and improvement of the AI systems that we know today. When that happened, entire communities sprung up to enhance and extend the models released by OpenAI. These communities spread to open source grassroots efforts and commercial entities alike. So everything is ideal. OpenAI is open sourcing everything. Everyone has access to their designs, models, etc. And so these communities are being formed where everyone just helps each other and develops cool things for the community and everyone else. All right, so it says Sam Altman became CEO in 2019. In 2020, OpenAI entered into an agreement with Microsoft. We'll go back to this in a second on why they entered an agreement with Microsoft. So OpenAI has since filed a response to this lawsuit, which justifies why they had to do it. It was basically because they didn't have enough funding for the hardware and for the AI researchers. It was just really hard to secure any funding for a nonprofit, especially if you're working with like cutting edge technology. It's just super expensive. But anyways, they reached an agreement where they licensed to Microsoft its GPT-3 language model. This is a very important line. So most critically, the Microsoft license only applied to OpenAI's pre-AGI technology. Microsoft obtained no rights to AGI. All right, so Microsoft can use all of OpenAI's models as long as it's not AGI. If it is AGI, Microsoft has no rights to it. It was up to OpenAI's non-profit board, not Microsoft, to determine when OpenAI attained AGI. So that was the original purpose of this board of directors, which was to determine when OpenAI has achieved AGI. So that was the original agreement between OpenAI's board and OpenAI and Microsoft. Now entering 2023, that's when things started to go out of control. In March 2023, OpenAI released GPT-4. GPT-4 is not just capable of reasoning, it's better at reasoning than average humans. It scored in the 90th percentile in the uniform bar exam for lawyers, 99th percentile in the GRE verbal test, even 77% on the advanced sommelier exam, which is like wine tasting. So is this like just a knowledge test on wines? But anyways, at this time, Sam Altman caused OpenAI to radically depart from its original mission of making its technology and knowledge available to the public. As we all know, GPT-4 is not open source. It's completely closed source. No one has the designs or the model. GPT-4's internal design was kept and remains a complete secret except to OpenAI. On information and belief is a term that's repeated quite a lot in this document, so here's another example, which I assume means that they don't have like concrete evidence, but just based on the information that's out there, that's what he thinks. There are no scientific publications describing the design of GPT-4, only press releases bragging about performance. So on information and belief, this secrecy is primarily driven by commercial consideration, not safety. GPT-4 is now a de facto Microsoft proprietary algorithm which has integrated into its Office software suite, which we now know is called Copilot. You can use Copilot in all the Microsoft Office applications. On information and belief, GPT-4 is an AGI algorithm, and so he's arguing that GPT-4 is already AGI, and based on the paragraph above, if it is AGI, then Microsoft should not have any rights to it. So it says, and hence expressly outside the scope of Microsoft's exclusive license with OpenAI. And he even quoted that Microsoft's own researchers have publicly stated that, quote, given the breadth and depth of GPT-4's capabilities, we believe it could reasonably be viewed as an early yet still incomplete version of AGI. Moreover, again, on information and belief, OpenAI is currently developing a model known as Q-Star, which has an even stronger claim to AGI. It may or may not be referring to this leaked document on 4chan, which I've covered in a previous video. But very quickly, what this leaked document is saying is that they're developing something using deep Q learning, which exhibits metacognition, meaning it can learn and improve itself over time, and cross-domain learning. So it can do things across different domains. Hence, it's able to generalize its artificial general intelligence. So we don't know if this document is true or not. There's arguments on both sides. Some people say it's legit, some people say it's not, but no one can really prove it. And the folks at OpenAI themselves have never denied this document. When Sam Altman was asked about this Q-Star project, all he had to say was no particular comment, and that it was an unfortunate leak. So he didn't deny it, he just called it an unfortunate leak. So this is saying that in addition to GPT-4, they're also developing this Q-Star project, which is even more characteristic of AGI. So they're repeating this again, Microsoft only has rights to OpenAI's pre-AGI technology. So everything up to AGI. Once they've achieved AGI, and it's up to the board to determine whether OpenAI has attained AGI, then Microsoft no longer has the rights. And a board coup took place in November 2023. Check out this video on the full story of that. But basically, the board got together and fired Sam Altman because, quote unquote, he was not consistently candid with the board. We don't know what happened. It could be related to this Q-Star document. It could be related to them achieving AGI. We don't know. Again, all of this is just based on information and belief. But things did a 180. So in a series of stunning developments spanning the next several days, Mr. Altman, Mr. Brockman, in concert with Microsoft, exploited Microsoft's significant leverage over OpenAI and forced the resignation of a majority of OpenAI's board members, including Chief Scientist Ilya Sutskever. Here are the original 5 board members. Helen Toner is arguably the only person on the board with at least some expertise in AI safety and policy. She wrote a paper a few weeks ago before Sam Altman's firing that criticized OpenAI about releasing things too fast. It is believed that Helen Toner, along with Tasha McCauley, were the ones who triggered the coup to fire Sam Altman. Ilya Sutskever, the chief scientist, originally he wasn't involved, but something happened which caused him to switch sides, so it tipped the balance of power to her direction and fire Sam Altman. Now, what exactly did Ilya see? that has actually been turned into a meme now. It could very well be related to this Q-star document, but we don't know. But anyways, what this sentence is saying is that, well, all right, Sam Altman is out. Greg then quit, and then over the weekend, they partnered with Microsoft and announced that, all right, well, we're gone from OpenAI, but we're going to start this new AI company with Microsoft. They already own all our technology. They have all our data centers. We're good to go. So OpenAI was pretty much screwed. And then so through a series of events to bring Sam Altman back to OpenAI and prevent this thing from happening, it basically forced the resignation of a majority of the board members, which again is Ilya Sutskever, chief scientist, and I would argue this guy is the most important person on the board, and then Tasha McCauley, and also Helen Toner, who I think this document argues they were originally put in place for AI safety and policy. Now, did they do the right thing in firing Sam Altman? I would argue not really. They executed really poorly. Maybe they had good intentions, but the execution was really poor, and that's why it completely backfired on them. All right, so after that event, a new board was reinstated. And in this document, it says the new board members lack substantial AI expertise and, again, on information and belief, are ill-equipped by design to make an independent determination of whether and when OpenAI has attained AGI. So going back to this board, Adam D'Angelo, he's a tech founder. Brett Taylor, also a tech founder. He was founder and CEO of Salesforce. And then Larry Summers, he's mostly an expert in finance. So out of these three, which person has expertise in AI safety and policy? I would argue no one. Now, since this lawsuit has gone out, I think it just happened a week ago, OpenAI has added 3 new board members, and maybe this was what has triggered them to do so. So see this video for more details, but just really quickly, they've added Dr. Sue Desmond-Hellmann, who was former CEO of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So that's good. We have some nonprofit expertise now. They've added Nicole Seligman, who has some legal expertise, and she's also former president of Sony. And also Fidji Simo, who is CEO of Instacart, which is another tech company. So I would argue she doesn't really add much to the diversity of expertise on the board. But anyways, this comment here, the new board members lack substantial AI expertise. I think it still holds true. Like out of the 6 current board members, none of them really have deep expertise in AI, unlike Ilya Sutskever, for example. So these events constitute breaches of the founding agreement, which, as he claims before, it should be non-profit, it should be open source. OpenAI's website continues to profess that it benefits all humanity. In reality, OpenAI has been transformed into a closed-source de facto subsidiary of the largest tech company in the world, Microsoft. GPT-4 is closed source, primarily to serve the proprietary commercial interests of Microsoft. And Microsoft's CEO even once said, if OpenAI disappeared tomorrow, we have all the IP rights, all the capability. We have the people, we have the compute, we have the data, we have everything. We are below them, above them, around them. First of all, what a boss statement. But anyways, this reinforces the point that, well, right now, OpenAI is just kind of eaten by this for-profit company, in fact, the biggest tech company in the world. So it has really deviated from the original mission, which was to be a non-profit open source organization. So in the next section, it just goes on to talk about the discussions Elon had with Demis Hassabis, founder of DeepMind, which we talked about at the beginning of this video. And then also Elon's discussion with Larry Page, who then called him a specious, and that kind of destroyed the friendship. And then he found out that Google was planning to acquire DeepMind. Elon Musk tried to outbid them with funding from PayPal co-founder Luke Nosek. However, it was unsuccessful, and Google eventually acquired DeepMind. So interestingly, actually, before they even started OpenAI, Sam Altman actually reached out to Elon to see if he would be interested in drafting an open letter to the US government regarding AI. The letter would call for regulation of AI. Elon says without the public comfort that regulatory oversight provides, there could very well be a situation where an AI causes great harm and thereafter AI research is banned as dangerous to public safety. Very early on, both Sam and Elon, they were concerned about AI safety to the point where they were thinking about actually writing a letter to the US president to push for regulation of AI. So I think both of them have good intentions. Even to this day, I think both Sam and Elon are the good guys and they have good intentions for OpenAI. And then afterwards, Sam and Elon were still discussing what to do next, so they proposed forming this new AI lab. The mission would be to create the first general AI and use it for individual empowerment. Safety would be a world-class requirement. The technology would be owned by the foundation and be used for the good of the world. So this was Sam Altman saying this, and it's in quotes, so he did write this exact sentence. And then Elon responded, "Agree on all." And then it goes on to talk about how Elon recruited Ilya Sutskever from Google. So it says one of the most important initial hires was the role of chief scientist. They all wanted Ilya Sutskever. He went back and forth on whether to leave Google and join the project, but it was ultimately a call from Mr. Musk that convinced Ilya to join OpenAI as chief scientist. And it was extremely hard to recruit more. So Elon actively recruited for OpenAI, but Google and DeepMind made increasingly lavish counteroffers to OpenAI. And Google had all the funding in the world. So it was really hard for OpenAI at that time to recruit top talent. And then in late February, Elon emailed Greg and Sam, reiterating that we need to do what it takes to get top talent. Let's go higher. If at some point we need to revisit what existing people are getting paid, that's fine. Either we get the best people in the world, or we will get whipped by DeepMind. And later here, he clarifies what he means by let's go higher. So it says when he said go higher and do what it takes to get top talent, it was ultimately Elon that was funding those efforts. So in 2016, he contributed over $15 million to OpenAI, more than any other donor. In 2017, he contributed nearly $20 million. In total, he contributed more than $44 million to OpenAI between 2016 and 2020. He also leased their initial office space and paid monthly rental expenses. And then it goes into more details on what happened over the years, which we've already covered earlier in this video. And then down here it says, in the years following the announcement of OpenAI LP, OpenAI's corporate structure became increasingly complex. So to show you how complex this became, here's a diagram. So we have the board of directors, which kind of decides the direction of OpenAI Incorporated, which is a nonprofit. Now, this nonprofit controls a holding company, which is a majority owner of OpenAI Global LLC, which is a capped for-profit company. And Microsoft is a minority owner, 49% of this for-profit company. And then we also have OpenAI GP LLC, which is owned by OpenAI Incorporated, and this also controls the holding company. So it got increasingly more complex, and later we see with the response from OpenAI that this was necessary to secure more funding from Microsoft, because they basically did not have enough capital to support the hardware, the computing, and also to support the AI engineers. But anyways, back to Elon's lawsuit, first of all. Here's what he criticizes about this current OpenAI corporate structure. He says that it's important to reflect on what has transpired here. A non-profit startup has collected tens of millions of dollars to develop AGI for public benefit. Shortly before achieving the very milestone, the company has become a closed for-profit partner of the world's largest corporation, Microsoft, thereby personally enriching the defendants. If this business model were valid, it would radically redefine how venture capitalism is practiced in California and beyond. Rather than start out as a for-profit entity, quote-unquote, smart investors would establish nonprofits, use pre-tax donations to fund research and development, and then once the research has been developed and proven, would slide the resulting IP assets into a for-profit venture to enrich themselves and basically maximize profits. So what this is saying is, if this structure was allowed, then this can be abused by other tech startups. Other tech startups are going to now register as a nonprofit, which has a lot more tax savings and benefits, and then once they get to a certain point, they'll switch to a for-profit. It's basically like exploiting the system to maximize the gains. To further understand why this is important, if OpenAI's new business model is valid, for every dollar that an investor invests by contributing to a nonprofit, that investor gets 50 cents back from the government in the form of reduced income taxes. So the net cost to them of each $1 of investment is only 50 cents. However, with OpenAI's business model, they get the same for-profit upside as those who invested the conventional way in for-profit corporations and thus do not get an immediate tax write-off. So again, he's basically saying by doing this, they're kind of exploiting the tax benefits of a nonprofit only to build a for-profit corporation. And then he raises this analogy. It would be like playing a game of basketball where the other team's baskets are worth twice as many points. If this court validates OpenAI's conduct here, any startup seeking to remain competitive in Silicon Valley would essentially be required to follow this OpenAI playbook. In other words, they're going to copy OpenAI and register first as a nonprofit and then become a for-profit, since there's a lot more financial benefits in doing so. Further down this document, it also mentions a potential conflict of interest when Sam Altman signed a letter of intent to buy $50 million worth of chips from a startup in which Mr. Altman himself was heavily invested. So this is referring to Rain AI. Sam was an investor in this company. So by OpenAI agreeing to buy $50 million worth of chips from this company, is there a conflict of interest? In other words, can Sam, as the CEO of OpenAI, indirectly benefit financially from another company, Rain AI, which he has personal investments in? So there could be a potential conflict of interest there. And then finally, Elon gives another analogy. He says, imagine donating to a nonprofit whose mission is to protect the Amazon rainforest. But then the nonprofit creates a for-profit Amazonian logging company that uses the fruits of donations to clear the rainforest. That's the story of OpenAI. And then there's more details at the bottom of the document, but we pretty much covered the full story. So the first section was like Elon claiming that they have either achieved AGI with GPT-4 or they are very close at achieving it. And if that is correct, then Microsoft should not have any rights to this technology. I'm not sure if that argument is strong enough at this stage, but his second argument, arguing about this strange corporate structure of OpenAI, I think this is his strongest argument. He's saying that OpenAI is registered as a nonprofit, so they're getting all the, financial and tax benefits and cost savings of being a nonprofit, but then they are operating as a for-profit entity. So that's kind of like cheating the system. And he's arguing that, well, if OpenAI can do this, then all the other tech startups in Silicon Valley and beyond are just going to copy their model because they're making basically more money with lower costs, lower taxes. Either something is wrong with this structure and they need to abolish it, or everyone else is just going to copy it and abuse the system. In a sense, I do get his point here where he has donated like 40-something million to OpenAI, but he's gotten nothing in return. And then finally, it says here, plaintiff, which is Elon Musk, hereby demands trial by jury as to all issues, claims, and or causes of action properly triable before a jury. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I believe what this is saying is that Elon wants a jury. So instead of just a judge who decides on what happens, he wants a group of regular people, which is the jury, to listen to the evidence and make decisions. So that's the lawsuit from Elon Musk. Let's now switch over to OpenAI's response to this. This was released on March 5th, and we can see the authors here. We have Greg Brockman, Sam Altman, a few other folks, even Ilya Sutskever, who has kind of disappeared and has remained pretty low-key ever since Sam got fired and rehired. But it seems like he was part of writing this document out as well. So they start off by saying the mission of OpenAI is to ensure AGI benefits all of humanity. We're now sharing what we've learned about achieving our mission and some facts about our relationship with Elon. We intend to move to dismiss all of Elon's claims. So the first point, we realized building AGI would require far more resources than we imagined. So Elon said they should announce an initial $1 billion funding commitment to OpenAI. In total, the nonprofit only raised less than $45 million from Elon and more than $90 million from other donors, far from this $1 billion announcement. So they said that in late 2015, Greg and Sam initially planned to raise $100 million. Then Elon said in an email, we need to go with a much bigger number than $100 million to avoid sounding hopeless. I think we should say that we are starting with a $1 billion funding commitment. I will cover whatever anyone else doesn't provide, which is a pretty cool thing for him to say. So he's saying, all right, if you announce $100 million, no one's going to really take you seriously compared with Google. let's announce a 1 billion funding commitment, and Elon, will cover whatever the difference is. And then in 2017, they realized that building AGI will require vast quantities of compute. We were going to need a lot more capital to succeed at our mission. Billions of dollars per year, far more than any of us, especially Elon, thought we'd be able to raise as the non-profit. Next point. The OpenAI team claims that they and Elon recognized a for-profit entity would be necessary to acquire those resources for computing. So they claim that Elon wanted us to merge with Tesla, or he wanted full control. Elon left OpenAI saying there needed to be a relevant competitor to Google DeepMind, and he was going to do it himself. So this sounds different from what Elon claims in his lawsuit. He kept saying that the original mission of OpenAI is to be non-profit. So we're starting to see some discrepancy here. What the OpenAI team claims is that in late 2017, they decided the next step for the mission was to create a for-profit entity. Elon wanted majority equity, initial board control, and to be CEO, which does sound like Elon based on his previous experience. He likes to take majority control of things. However, they could not agree to terms because they felt that it was against the mission for any individual to have absolute control over OpenAI. This was one of the statements in the founding agreement. He then suggested merging OpenAI into Tesla. In early 2018, Elon forwarded us an email suggesting that OpenAI should attach to Tesla as its cash cow, commenting that Tesla is the only path that could even hope to hold a candle to Google. So at that time, OpenAI was in desperate need of more funding to support its computing, and so Elon suggested to merge with Tesla, and Tesla would be its cash cow. So it would provide the finances to OpenAI. So here's the original email. Someone, this name is blanked out, sends it to Elon Musk. And the key sentence here is, OpenAI today is burning cash. The funding model cannot reach the scale to seriously compete with Google. A for-profit pivot might create a more sustainable revenue stream over time. The most promising option I can think of, as mentioned earlier, would be for OpenAI to attach to Tesla as its cash cow. I believe attachments to other large suspects would fail due to an incompatible company DNA. So this person is suggesting to merge with Tesla, and he or she is sending it to Elon Musk. So I'm guessing it's someone who works at Tesla, and then Elon Musk forwards this to Ilya and Greg Brockman, saying that this person is exactly right. We may wish it otherwise, but in my and this person's opinion, Tesla is the only path that could even hope to hold a candle to Google. So he's kind of agreeing with this person that the only path forward is to merge with Tesla. But they decided not to merge with Tesla, and then Elon soon chose to leave OpenAI, saying that their probability of success was 0, which he totally got wrong. I mean, OpenAI is like the biggest AI company out there right now. Some would even argue that they are outcompeting Google. And then in December of 2018, Elon sent an email saying, even raising several hundred million won't be enough. This needs billions per year immediately or forget it. So here's the actual email where he says this needs billions per year immediately or forget it. Unfortunately, humanity's future is in the hands of, I'm guessing this is Larry or someone at Google or DeepMind, and they are doing a lot more than this. Again, I assume this is referring to Google DeepMind. The next point they raised is that we advance our mission by building widely available beneficial tools. And so they give a few examples of some countries or companies using their AI for various purposes. This one is boosting farming income in Kenya. This one is reducing the costs of agriculture in India, etc., etc. So they kind of argue we are providing, free tools to the public for the benefit of humanity. And then this sentence is key here. They claim that Elon understood the mission did not imply open sourcing AGI. As Ilya told Elon, as we get closer to building AI, it'll make sense to start being less open. The open in OpenAI means that everyone should benefit from the fruits of AI after it's built, but it's totally okay to not share the science. And Elon replied simply with, yep. So here they're claiming that Elon understood that this did not imply open sourcing AGI, which is counter to what Elon's lawsuit is kind of suing them for. Elon is saying OpenAI is now closed. It's not open source at all. So again, there's some discrepancy here. Here's the actual email. It's from Ilya, sent to Elon, Sam, and Greg. Ilya says, as we get closer to building AI, it'll make sense to start being less open. Which makes sense. I mean, if you build something that's so dangerous that it could destroy society, for example, break cryptography, then it would not make sense to actually release it as an open source project. You would want to keep it closed for safety purposes. But I'm not arguing like who's right or who's wrong here. Basically, Ilya says this, and then Elon simply replied with yep. Now, one could argue that Elon gets like tons of emails per day, so he might have just skimmed this really quickly and then replied without really reading it seriously. I don't think with a simple yep reply that this indicates that Elon agrees with OpenAI being closed. And then they continue, we're sad that it has come to this with someone whom we've deeply admired. Someone who inspired us to aim higher, then told us we would fail, start a competitor, and then sued us when we started making meaningful progress towards OpenAI's mission without him. So I'm guessing Sam wrote this personally, just my guess. And then this update on March 11th, they said, we are seeking to have the lawsuit assigned to a dedicated case management, since it involves AI technology and the claims span almost a decade. So that was OpenAI's response. I'll link to this page in the description as well. Now, as I am not a lawyer myself, I asked ChatGPT, well, what's the actual process of a lawsuit? So the first step is filing a complaint or a lawsuit, which Elon has done. And then we are at step number 3, response by the defendant. So the defendant has a certain amount of time to respond. After which, if they don't settle this, then we enter a discovery phase. Now, this is where things get interesting. Discovery is the process where both parties gather evidence and information relevant to the case. This can include requesting documents, taking depositions, making sworn statements outside of the court, and issuing interrogatories or written questions. So if we proceed to enter the discovery phase, basically both sides might be forced to reveal a lot more documents and answer a lot more questions. We could even see some evidence on what exactly is Q star. What exactly is OpenAI building behind the scenes? After the discovery phase, there is this pre-trial motions phase where either party could file motions. This can include like dismissing the case, asking for summary judgment, which is basically a decision without a full trial, or addressing other matters. So we're kind of at number 3 right now. How I think this will play out is they're probably going to settle this under the table. It's going to be too much headache. They're going to risk exposing too much if they actually proceed to take this to court. And this discovery phase, I think, is especially dangerous for both parties. There's a lot of confidential information which they might not be comfortable actually exposing. But in a nutshell, that is Elon Musk's lawsuit against OpenAI. Let me know in the comments, what's your take on this? Who do you think has the upper hand? And what do you think will happen next? Will they just settle it, or will this actually proceed into the discovery phase and eventually continue to a jury trial? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. I'll see you in the next one.